Okay. Today's guest is Mr. Dan O'Donnell. He has been living and working in Thailand, making a living by manufacturing products in China and selling them online in the United States. He's been to over 20 countries, and in his free time, you can catch him surfing and playing sand volleyball. I can't wait to get to it. Dan, thank you for being here.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for the invite.
Yay! So, Dan, you've been there for 6 years now. What started it all?
Well, the first trip to Thailand, really, a guy I played baseball with, we were at baseball practice standing in the outfield. And if anybody listening plays baseball, you have a lot of time to talk at baseball practice. We were just, in the outfield during batting practice. And this guy I just met, it was the first day I had met him. He had gotten back from Thailand maybe a month or two before. And he was just going on and on about how great it was. And it took him about probably 10 minutes to convince me that I should go. And he said, I'm going again in December, and you should just meet me there. I'm going to Koh Samui. And I actually remember at the time I wasn't broke, but I didn't have a ton of extra cash. And, international travel sounds expensive. And he said, we found this place on Koh Samui, which was, he said, it's a bungalow, little house, literally on the beach, where you step down the front stairs and you're in the sand. And he said, 3 of us shared that place, he and a couple of his buddies, and it was $7 a night total. I'm like, what? You split $7 a night 3 ways? He's like, yeah, it was great. And we're on the beach. I'm like, okay, I'm going. I'll be there. I'll see you there. So yeah, that first trip to Thailand, I had a great time. And so I kept coming back. For roughly 10 years, not quite, maybe about 8 or 9 years, I would come back almost every winter. And I wanted to spend more time. My goal was initially to spend 3 months in the winter, which I actually never did. I spent at the most 1 month, but I would come every year, sometimes twice. And eventually I just moved. So I went from 1 month a year to just living there.
So what, I'm trying to do the math here. Does that put you at 25 when you had first gone to Thailand?
Yeah, right around there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was 2005 or so. Yeah. Yeah. So if Tyler Klein is listening, he's a teacher up in Lampang near Chiang Mai. He might check this out. So thanks, T.
No way. So did you guys make the move together?
No, he moved before I did. But we both would come back pretty much every year, I think. And actually, I know you're doing research on how this works, right? For you and other people.
Yeah.
And there are a bunch of different ways that people make it work. But the way he made it work was he was also from Washington State, which it's a lot of the years very rainy and, cold. And his work, so his work was doing sports courts, like building for people tennis courts, basketball courts, stuff like that. That's what the company he worked for did. And that's very seasonal in Washington. So they would work whenever the rains let up in the spring until the rain started again in September maybe, or maybe October if they're lucky. So he would just work basically the summer and live, under his means and stash away money. And then he would go spend the whole, I think probably more of the year in Thailand than in the US, I think, just off of working that season, because it was good work while it lasted. So he was just smart about managing his money, frugal, and he could just go relax for more than half the year. That was his method.
My hero, yeah. So how did you go from going from doing a month a year to finally making that transition and I'm ready to go?
Yeah. So when I was doing a month or a few weeks, that was when I was in real estate. And it's funny, you're doing that stuff now too. I was a real estate agent, but also an investor. And I really liked the investing part. For me, that was more fun. I like making deals and hunting for bargains, and that's just something I enjoy. So I could get away, especially in the winter. Everything slows down around the holidays in real estate. Most people don't want to buy or sell a house at that time. So it's a good time to just go somewhere. And a lot of real estate agents go to Mexico for a month or, something like that. But then I would have to come back because I had irons in the fire, deals I had to do. And a lot of it, you need to be there, you're signing things and they're notarizing it and all that. And this was before it was real. Like now you can sign things online a lot more easily. Back then it wasn't like that. Maybe they could fax documents to you and then you'd have to find a US notary, and like it's just kind of not worth it.
Yeah.
So anyway, when I was heavy into real estate, it wasn't easy to do. But then fast forward, I was in a position where I still had real estate, but I was running a flea market. And I just, let's see, how did that actually happen? I went to Chiang Mai and Thailand in general, went down to the islands, and I took my mom for the first time. And when I was in Chiang Mai, I remember I was on couchsurfing.com, and I just did a search to see if anybody on there had the word entrepreneur in their profile. And I found one person, and I wound up meeting up with that guy at a co-working space, which maybe some people, I guess now more people have heard of it, like because of WeWork and things like this. But there are little they look like little coffee shops, some of them, but they're all over Thailand and other places. And I had never heard of one or seen one. So yeah, so this guy, I said, hey, what are you doing? You're living in Thailand, you're working online, let's chat. I'm curious. And he said, okay, just come by Pun Space. That's the name of this co-working space. And he gave me the location, and I didn't really know what it was. But when I got there, there's all these people chatting and working, and a couple of his friends I met, and they said they're doing e-commerce. And I'm like, so this is like a shared office space. You guys are all doing your own thing. You don't work together. They're like, no, we do our own thing, but we just come here to work and like share ideas. I'm like, that's amazing. And that's exactly what I wanted, because at the time I was just starting a website. I had started it a few years earlier, but for years I had the goal, which is what you're talking about, which to be location independent. And the way I wanted, yeah, the way I thought I wanted to do that, and what made sense was I was going to have a website that basically generated ad income. If I could get enough people coming there and enough things going on at the website, I'd have Google ads on there mainly. And in Thailand, it doesn't take a whole lot. If you can make $1,000 a month, or even like 700, you can live in Thailand. And some people would say even less. I mean, some people do it on 500. So I almost lost track of your question. But so I was in a position where I had started this website, and I had about $200 to $300 a month coming in. So I had maybe a third of what I needed to live in Thailand. But the flea market was taking up so much of my time. I knew at some point, instead of waiting years for the website to grow, it would probably be better to get the flea market off my plate so I could focus on the website. And when I found this co-working space with a bunch of people that knew more than I did, I thought, wow, if I get rid of that flea market and come over here and hang out with these people, I'm going to learn way more quickly and probably get that income up. And I had some savings. At my position at the time, I had $15,000 in savings, and I did the math. And if I'm making even 200 on my website, and I'm negative 500 with my living expenses, I'm losing 500 a month. But what is that? 30 months, right?
Yeah.
So I had a long runway. I'm like, okay, so I'll sell the flea market, come over here with my savings, and hopefully pretty quickly I'll get at least to break even where I'm not losing money every month. And that happened within 2 or 3 months. And it probably would have taken years back when I was distracted. The flea market was fun. I really did enjoy it, but it tied me to a place. So that's why I sold it.
Wow, 2 or 3 months. How did it come to be 2 or 3 months? Just those guys were so helpful.
I didn't really get any hot tips specifically from those people, but it was inspiring because I saw a bunch of people that had already done what I wanted to do in different ways. They sold other things. They ran different, some of them were working remotely for an employer. Some of them were like affiliate marketers. Some of them, I knew 2 dentists and 2 doctors that were remote only, believe it or not. So it really showed me this is absolutely, there are normal people doing this, and they're not geniuses. Like they're intelligent people, but they're normal people, So I just figured it out. It made me sure that I could do it, basically. And the actual way it happened was my ad revenue. I'm trying to remember exactly. My ad revenue went from, $200 to $300 a month to like 2 or 3,000 a month within a few months. And I think it was, at the time, it was all Facebook traffic for me. I still have a page called Positive Thinking, and it's like 1.8 million people. And I got better. I was sharing videos, and then I had ads on the site, and I just got better at that pretty quickly when I focused on it. And I had an assistant that also helped. And yeah, so it happened a lot quicker than I even really had hoped for. So it was great.
Yeah, yeah. You know what? When you focus all your energy and efforts, and I know that this has been true for me, and I've seen it for a lot of people. But when you jump ship, and all you give yourself is that one opportunity. That's all you do. It seems like it works out for the most part.
Yeah, I think you're right. And the thing is, that might sound a little scary to some people, like if that's not their personality, but it's almost always reversible. Like if you go to Chiang Mai and fail, which I saw some people do, they just went home and like got a part-time job and kept working on their website. It wasn't that big of a deal, or they'd go back to school if they totally gave up or whatever.
That you consider that totally giving up, going back to school?
Well, some people did totally give up, and that's what they happened to go do. But yeah, but the people who really wanted to make it work, they pretty much just made it happen. And I agree with you. You burn the boats or whatever, right? Like, have you ever read the book called The Alchemist?
Yes.
Yeah, and where, I don't want to, spoiler alert, if everybody's read that book anyway, but he sells his sheep.
Yeah.
And it's a big deal for him. That he's a shepherd. It's his whole way of life. But if I remember right, if he's going to go across, take the boat over to the pyramids, he has to sell his sheep to buy the ticket. So he does. And it was just a total fork in the road, like A or B, which one are you going to do? And he just went for it. And I realized, the flea market, I remember telling my mom, the flea market, that's my flock, that's my sheep. And I got to sell it, And if I
Has
want,
your mom read The Alchemist?
I think so. Or I was telling her about it. I really don't remember.
Okay.
But I just remember thinking, I can always come back to Bellingham. That's where I'm from, near Seattle. I can always come back to Bellingham, Washington, and start another flea market if I feel like I made the wrong decision. That's doable, And my friends will still be here, and I can just pretend, it was just a little adventure.
It never happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what you're saying is, if you go and you fail, it doesn't necessarily mean that you come back home. You become a bum, live under the street, and live under the bridge, and are begging for money. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yeah. Especially, we're both American. If you're from a rich country, I think people overestimate the risk a little bit. If I was flat broke in my hometown, one of my friends would let me sleep on their couch. And even if they didn't, seriously, I could put a tent in a park. There's a food bank. They give away salmon at the food bank in my hometown.
Yeah.
I knew a girl that, I knew a girl that volunteered at the food bank, and she said they had fresh salmon that would get donated, and it usually wouldn't get taken because a lot of the people coming there, they don't really have like a full kitchen and an oven and stuff. And so the volunteers would take home fresh salmon from the food bank. So in my situation, the worst case scenario really wasn't that scary,
You'd be eating salmon. You'd be eating good at least.
Yeah. So I think sometimes if you clarify your worst case scenario, like your likely worst case scenario, rather than letting it be like this vague boogeyman, the unknown, people fear the unknown and uncertainty, but if you just go, okay, if I go to wherever it is for the people listening, if I go to Europe or Australia or whatever, and it doesn't work out, as long as I have money for a flight home, and I'll give you a hint, even if you don't have money for a flight home, if you're American, the embassy will send you home. Somebody will send you home. It's just not that bad. You can always go back and get some job and stay alive. So anyway, I'm a big fan. Seriously, not to get too cliche or whatever, but we're not here forever. So don't wait forever, because one day your opportunity isn't there anymore. Just do things, try things. Actually, my favorite quote, I made a note here so I wouldn't forget. It's Ralph Waldo Emerson. And all of life is an experiment. The more experiments you make, the better. I believe life is more like dodgeball than chess. Like you can't plan 10 moves ahead. You know, things happen, things change, you have to react. So there you go.
I love that. I'm gonna. Did you come up with that dodgeball one, or did you hear that from
That no,
someone?
that's something I think about it that way. Yeah. You know, in dodgeball, like you never know who's
Hashtag.
going to throw the ball at you. And if you can catch it, they're out. If it hits you, you're out. Like you just react. And it's like the total opposite of something like chess where you're trying to plan ahead, right? And it's not bad to try to plan ahead, but things are going to change. You have to adjust your plans. It's just kind of how life goes, in my opinion. So yeah, you can never. There's another saying, I can't remember who said this one, but you can't wait until all the lights are green to leave your house, like the traffic
Mm-hmm.
lights. You know, you just start. If you hit a red light or a detour, it's okay. That's normal. Everybody does that, you know? So,
Mm-hmm. Oh my
yeah.
God, these are so great. I love them all. And I will be listening to them later, writing them all down, and I'll put
Yeah,
them in my bathroom or something.
good.
Yeah, so I mean, I know that for me, and I know for a lot of people, we're afraid also of losing the things that we have already, right? So maybe we're not thinking worst case scenario, we're gonna be broke and then dead, but maybe it's like, wow, I feel like I've worked so hard. I don't know how long it took you to do your flea market, but maybe, I came back from Australia thinking that I was going to buy houses, boom, 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 have all my money and then can go. And it's taken me 3 years to buy and keep two houses. Yeah, I've remodeled some houses and sold them, but now I'm like, well, if I don't have enough savings in my bank account and I go and I fail, it's not just that I can come back, but maybe I'll lose that what I've already gained that took me 3 years to do. Did you have things like that? Like, did you have property? I mean, I guess you had kind of already mapped it out, but I guess what is your opinion on that?
Yeah, I did actually. I was in sort of a similar position to you. I did have some property, and I still do. Um, there's a whole nother story. I had a lot more property at one point. I went I went down to Texas and bought a big apartment building that didn't work out. But at the time that I moved to Thailand, I still had the house that I used to live in, which was a rental at that point. And I mean, I'm all about kind of another cliche, but thinking outside the box and like just I don't really like the like societal conventions. Sometimes I just don't buy into them. Like I lived in the basement at my flea market because there was an area down there that could be a home, and I just moved in there, and I had no
Hmm.
more commute. And then I had rented out my house at one point. I rented out my house, moved in. I think it was two houses up the street with my neighbor slash friend, almost the identical house, but I was paying 450 a month for a room
Hmm.
versus my mortgage of what was it? I think with taxes and everything, it was around 1,400. So I rented out, and it was a three-bedroom house with just me. So I rented it out at least a little bit of positive cash flow. I don't remember how much, but I made, call it 100 or 200 bucks a month off that house, and went and moved in a room. And then I went from there to living in the basement at the flea market. So I had minimized my expenses, and
Hmm.
my property, that house, and I had a small apartment building, which I still have with my mom, and I own that. Um, that was cash flow positive as well. So unless it went vacant and I couldn't find another tenant, there wasn't really much risk there. They were cash flow positive.
Hmm.
Um, and the other thing, which is key in real estate, as I'm sure you know, is having a good manager if you're not going to be there. So, and I'm lucky. I have a good friend that I trust 100%, who he's also a real estate investor and has a bunch of rentals, and he manages mine.
Hmm.
So, so I was well set up in that way. Like I was lucky in that way. I had good people. So, so to your fear though, I guess I felt like if things did start going sideways, like the management wasn't going well or something, maybe I would have to come back. But I
Yeah.
don't think it would happen so quickly that I couldn't come back and fix it. Like that,
Hmm.
I would know something was going wrong and say, okay, I'm going to have to put Thailand on hold and go home and fix this. You know,
Hmm.
the flea market was a little different because I sold that to the guy that was helping me manage it. So I wasn't going to just come back and be like, hey, sell it back to me. You know,
Hmm.
so that was like the sheep and the alchemist. I had to decide that I was moving on from that.
Let go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And then he
Um,
went to jail for selling stolen stuff. And so it turns out if I went back, I could start it again and I wouldn't have to compete with him.
I don't think that's in your plans at all, though, is it?
No, no, I'm over it. Yeah.
That's so amazing. So, what are you doing the same thing that you were doing when you first got to Thailand, or have things changed and progressed?
It's changed a lot. I still have the website. Okay, so when I went to Chiang Mai, within a few months, my income went up to where I was living off it, and it was more than I needed to live off of, which I was really happy about. But Facebook, so it was a Facebook page that was sending most of the traffic to my website, almost all of it. And then that traffic was how I was making the advertising revenue. But Facebook pages and the way that Facebook sends traffic to outside of Facebook changed a lot. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know, it's probably been like 4 years now or something. And they're really stingy with traffic now. They're happy to send you to like a video that's on Facebook or a Facebook page or group, but they're not going to give you a lot of free traffic outside of Facebook like they used to. So now
Mm-hmm.
if you want to send traffic to your website, you can get a little bit, but the organic reach is going to be a fraction. Like I've got 1.8 million people on that page, and a good post will get somewhere between like 50 to 100,000 people even seeing it,
Yeah.
and that's not people clicking on it. That's people even seeing it.
Yeah.
And if it's a link to outside Facebook, it's going to be even less. So anyway,
Really.
that way to make easy money, it wasn't easy. I mean, it took a lot of work, but that went away. It went down to a small fraction of what it had been. So then what I had been working on before I went to Thailand and after I first got to Chiang Mai was a board game. It's a personal development board game. It's called Better Me. And so I went to China, and not that you have to, but I went there, met with manufacturers, made this board game, and started selling that mainly on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
And that then made me my monthly living, and more than I needed to live in Thailand. And since then, I've made other products. I made a thing called Love Bombs, Kindness Cards, and a card game called Famous Failures. They're all personal development theme. And now we're doing other things like shirts and jigsaw puzzles and stuff. So yeah,
I've
now I'm
seen some
selling
of
physical
your new
products.
puzzles.
Yeah, good ones, right? You know what? Actually, I
Yeah.
don't know. Is your uh, is your show like adults? I don't know. I'm just gonna show you. I've been drinking out of this cup, and I'm
Yeah.
careful to keep the label facing towards me because hopefully I don't offend a bunch of people. But this is what it says on it. Have you
Yeah.
seen this
Yeah.
product?
I went through and I looked at a bunch of your products. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
There's like
and this is
if
actually
there's like a big boob one or two or something like
yeah.
that.
There's big tits gear. And
Yeah, I know.
this is
I
actually
just
a
couldn't
bad
I couldn't
sample.
bring
You
myself.
see the word big is not even straight. It's actually, this is a good mug, but the quality of the printing is bad. This is a sample. We did not use this company. And then this other one, which I've dropped, I broke the cap, but this is my old scratched up one that I really love this cup. It's a great,
Yeah.
it's a vacuum insulated tumbler. So it keeps things cold like overnight even. But I put a bunch of electrical tape over where it says big dick gear. Because
Oh,
when I go into 7-Eleven and I set it up there to get my coffee, I don't want everybody reading my cup when I'm in there like every day. So anyway, we do
I thought
prank
that was the
gifts.
point.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Didn't you want everybody to know?
So we got into goofy products just because it's fun, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there was a cat butthole puzzle and another dog humping another dog
Yeah,
puzzle.
humping
I
chihuahuas.
definitely watching those.
Yeah.
Like, maybe my dad would like that.
Yeah.
He's a goofy guy like that.
People like them as gifts. Yeah. There's our best seller right now is Pooping Dogs, which is it's a collage of 10 different dogs pooping on a jigsaw puzzle, you know.
Where do you come up with that?
Uh, I actually don't remember exactly on that one. I really don't. The company that I make, the factory I work with for, excuse me, for the board games and the card games, they also make puzzles. So that's where the puzzle idea came from. I was just looking around on their Alibaba site or their website or something. And I'm like, yeah, they make puzzles. And I knew that when I went to visit them like 5 years ago, I saw the stacks of puzzles they were working on, but I had really no interest in it. I thought, well, what the heck? Like, they're really good to work with. I like this company, so let's try a puzzle. And I think we just I try to always do something different when I start anything. Like I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to be the 50th Italian restaurant in a city or something. Like when I had the flea market, the closest one was Vancouver to the north and almost to Seattle in the south. So I
Mm-hmm.
had like, I don't know, 150 miles or something where I was the only flea market, and that's how I wanted it. And so the jigsaw puzzle, I didn't want to do the 3,000th cat puzzle.
Yeah.
So we went for the prank angle. Yeah, and it worked.
I definitely love it. So that's really cool. So tell me about how you're able to live there. I know, okay, financially you got all
Yeah.
sorted. You made that leap and now you're making enough money to live there. Are you there on a traveler's visa or how does that work for you?
Um, most of the time I've been here, it's been on an education visa. So that's
Mm-hmm.
Thai language education. And if
Mm-hmm.
anybody's specifically interested in Thailand, you don't have to study Thai. There are schools that teach Spanish and Chinese and maybe, I think, French. Yeah, for sure, French. So if you want to learn a language, whether it's Thai or something else, you can do that here. And that's a 1 year visa. And it's always changing, but you can do more than one. Um, they might limit you how many years you can do in one language or how many years total. It's always changing. Um, but that's a really good way if you're not looking for a job here. You can't work on that visa, but
Mm-hmm.
and so that's what I do, education visa. But then there are a lot of other people that they do want a job. So the most common is an English teacher. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and then some people are like scuba instructors and things like that. Some people start their own business, um, which it's quite a few hoops to jump through and stuff as a foreigner, but it's doable. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it, any restaurants, all sorts of different things. Well, not tour companies. There are some things that are restricted and only Thais can do. Like I don't think you can open a massage shop, for example, or a tour company. But
Mm.
yeah, so that's how I do it. And if you're if you're coming and going more frequently, you don't even need an education visa. You can come in for a tourist visa. You can get 2 months, depending on if you're American, you can get 2 months, and a lot of other countries. Some countries get less, like 1 month. And then you can usually extend that. So if you get a 2 month tourist visa, you can extend it once. You can make it 3 months total. And you can't just go back, go somewhere else for a week and come back and do that again. But you can probably do that like twice a year, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And for a lot of nationalities, you can come here for 30 days or less with no visa. You just show up, you get the 30-day stamp, and you're fine. And then you move on to wherever you're going next. Yeah.
Well, you said just they're generally a year for the education visa, but you've been there for 6 years, right?
Right.
So
So
are you staying outside of the country for very long?
no, and there are a lot of like people in Facebook groups and different internet forums and stuff that honestly they tell people that what I did is not possible. They say
Yeah.
things like you can only have 2 years education visa or 2 years of the same language. Or there's all this information going around, which is like who knows who said it first or where that came from. But I checked in with my teacher at my school. I'm like, hey, I
Mm-hmm.
keep hearing, you can only do 2 years consecutive of the same language, and she's like, I don't know who started that, but there's nothing in writing that says that. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I mean, sometimes the way things work in Thailand, it's not always like clear. The rules aren't
Mm-hmm.
always clear, but you just go apply. And if they say yes, then you got your third one, and everybody was wrong.
Yeah.
So, most people don't do a lot of years of education visas. Most people come and do it for maybe a year or two, and then they go back home or they go somewhere else. But yeah, I don't know.
Do you ever worry about getting kicked out of the country or them going, you can't come back and go somewhere else?
Not really. The last time I went to apply for my current education visa in Penang, Malaysia, the guy there, the guy at the desk that accepts your application, told me that he thought it wouldn't be approved, and he's not the guy who
Mm-hmm.
approves it, but there's a fee to apply, and he was either being nice or pretending to be nice. And he said, "Look, I don't want you to waste your 100, I think it was $150." He's like, "I'm really sure they're not going to approve this and you're just wasting your money and your time. And so I called my teacher back at the school. I mean, there's a chance that guy was in a bad mood or for some reason didn't like me, or he was actually trying to help me because like people like me just were not getting approved at that consulate. That's the thing. Like each consulate has a reputation and they change over time. Like sometimes everybody knows Penang is really low key and easy, and sometimes it's not. And it'll change over the years when different, people move. Like a different guy is in charge of this one. Now it's hard. Anyway, so I called my teacher and she said, well, you can apply in Phuket. It just costs a little more and it will get approved here. So I said, okay. So I decided not to maybe waste my money there and just enjoyed my time in Penang and I was with my dad. We went to Sumatra, Indonesia, did a little surfing, and then I just came back and processed the visa stuff here, which, there's a fee of about $500 to do that. So it costs more, but it happened. It happened, Yeah. Thailand is not the easiest. It's not the hardest, but it's not the easiest. Yeah.
To remain in the country, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's, it depends on your situation. Like if you're a teacher, I think people stay here for years and years pretty easily.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's always changing here. And you just kind of have to understand that about this country is like the rules next year will be slightly different than they are this year, or maybe very different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I imagine, too, if you're showing them proof of income that you're not taking other people's jobs and stuff like that, they might be a little bit more willing.
Yeah, I think it honestly comes down to the individual immigration officer when you're crossing back into the country. And that is a big concern. Are you working here? Like some people, I'm trying to remember, the guy in Penang, the guy who said I wouldn't get approved, he asked me that. And that might be why he was kind of telling me it wouldn't get approved, because they thought I was working here, which I'm not.
Right.
But yeah, they definitely don't want you to come here. And it happens, people come here and they're working like under the table as a bartender unofficially. Yeah. And that's a job that some Thai person would have. And I understand that, if you're going to be here and work, you need to do it the right way. So they're looking for people that are trying to get around the rules, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
And not that this won't apply to most people, but what I'm thinking about next year, my current visa ends in December. And who knows, things are up in the air right now because of a lot of countries, banning travel and stuff. But there's a business visa where the idea is somebody who's going to come to Thailand to export from Thailand, to work with Thai companies and buy things here and sell them somewhere else. There's a visa for that. So I might look into that next year. That sounds cool to me, sourcing, there's a lot of cool clothing here and different carved wood products, and so we'll see.
And totally discounted for, to be able to sell it back to the US.
Yeah. I mean, Southeast Asia in general, the prices here, and we haven't even talked about that really. I mentioned the cost of living briefly, but cost of living in a place like this, like I'll just sidetrack a little bit. There might be somebody listening to this right now who maybe they have some kind of income, whether it's a rental property or something they do on, a website they have, or some part-time job they have online or whatever. And maybe they're living somewhere expensive and they're going, well, I'm only making $1,000 a month from this thing, so that's not enough to go live somewhere else. You might be wrong. You might want to check living expenses where you want to go. Or maybe instead of moving to Paris the first year or Tokyo, maybe you go to Bali or Vietnam or somewhere like that where, you can live on $500 a month to start, Even if you don't want to live like that for the rest of your life, that might be the bridge to give you the time to work on whatever you're working on.
Yeah, you're definitely giving me inspiration. Andrew and I have given ourselves a deadline to move to Spain, to move in January. And we were planning on moving to the Philippines for 3 months to just learn Tagalog because he's half Filipino. But, maybe taking your advice, end up there a little bit longer while we do our online business and then move to Spain.
Yeah. And do you talk about what it is you're working on, or I'm curious?
You mean on?
Yeah. You mentioned property, like you're focusing on property, or do you have another thing that you want to work on if you're, in the Philippines, or you still exploring options?
Yeah, actually, so my husband, Andrew, started a company, a virtual assistant company. So he sells virtual assistant services to companies here in the US. So
Okay.
he has a handful of clients now that he's working with, and we're growing that business. So it should be pretty good once we have, 2 or 3 times the amount, I think, of what we do
Right.
now.
Yeah. So going there, you could meet people and interview them face to face and things. Is that part of the idea?
Um, It would be cool. I mean, we've had virtual assistants for the past 2 years in our real estate business, and it's really easy to meet them online,
Yeah.
and get referrals that way. But I know they definitely would like to meet us at some point.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I do the same. I have three. I had a virtual assistant for years in Croatia, but
Hmm.
right now I've got. It's kind of a cool story since you're into this stuff. I've got three in outside Manila in the Philippines, in the
Hmm.
northern part of the Metro Manila area, and I, the first one I found on there's a website called. Well, maybe I shouldn't say it. No,
No,
I
no,
found
go
her.
for it.
Yeah, online jobs, I found
Hmm.
her in that marketplace for VAs. And then the second one was her roommate and like best friend, or one of her best friends, who also was interested in work, and I needed some part-time stuff. And so she wound up being full-time, and they lived together. So it's almost
Hmm.
like a little office there. And then I just hired their third friend, and they're
Hmm.
all like really, they went to school together, they went to the same university, and they're all really close already. And it's really great because they help train each other. Like the newest hire, if she has questions, she can ask me, but she can also ask the other two, or like her best friends.
Yeah.
It's been really cool how that worked out. I just got lucky.
No, seriously, they're always looking out for each other. Most of our employees, they end up recommending their friends and family, just like you're saying,
Yeah.
and it makes the hiring process so easy. And then it makes it like a little family, like you're
Yeah.
saying.
Right.
And they look out for each other and they teach each other, so it makes the work a lot less difficult.
And there's that sort of positive peer pressure too, where if 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 somebody you've been working with for a year or two recommends their friend, they're not going to want their friend to flake out on you. So
Mm-hmm.
there's that accountability, I guess is the way that's the word, where yeah, nobody wants to make the other person look bad, or it's like, let's do a good job. I recommended you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's good.
Right on. So what do you use your virtual assistants for?
A lot of, well, if people have heard of Merch by Amazon or print on demand in general, we do a fair amount of that. And so either creating or uploading designs. Have you heard of Merch by Amazon, or like
I actually haven't.
there's Redbubble and TeePublic? It's all these websites that people go to and buy shirts, and not just shirts,
Oh.
but phone cases and coffee cups and you know even socks and things like that. So you create a design, whatever it is. Like you could do some Arizona type design. You put it on these various sites, and then people can buy it on a coffee cup. But you don't have to, Redbubble or Amazon, when they get the order, they'll actually take the blank coffee cup, print it on there, and ship it, and they give you a royalty. So,
Mm.
like on a T-shirt, we generally make about $5 on a sale, depending on the website. On Amazon, we make $5. On Redbubble, it might be like 3 or 2 or something. But you don't have to handle any inventory. You just get the royalty. So the people, I've got one assistant who works almost exclusively uploading designs and running ads to those designs. Just we make all kinds of
Cool.
goofy shirts. Some of our shirts are like inspiring. They go along with the personal development theme, and then there are others that are just goofy. Um, yeah, like one. I'm not worried about anybody stealing this niche because we've only sold like 2 or 3 shirts, so it's not a hot niche. But I was so happy we made like fake tourist shirts with the wrong
Hmm.
landmark. So we just sold one, Miami, Florida, with the pyramids. It was like an image of
Hmm.
people riding camels at the pyramids, but it says Miami, Florida. Like it's just a stupid shirt. But we like to do stupid funny.
That's great. No, that's awesome. So what else? What else do you think is important for people that are interested in moving and working abroad? Is there other things that you've noted down
Yeah,
or
I did. I
had?
made a couple notes. So we already talked about how it's reversible generally. It's not
Yeah.
like if it doesn't go the way you hoped, you can go back and you can make another go at it later. It's kind of like, those
Hmm.
mountain climbers, like they get halfway up and then there's a storm and they have to retreat to base camp and wait. It's kind of like that. But the other thing I wanted to say is a lot of people, it's an emotional thing, probably more than it is like a logistics thing or a finances thing. Like you can figure out the logistics and the finances, but people have this like real like gut level fear, right? And a big part
Hmm.
of it, I think, is they feel like they might be alone. Like not you, like if you have, your spouse or maybe your best friend's going to go with you or something, it might be different. But some people feel like, ooh, it's scary. I'm going to be alone. But I just
Mm.
wanted to say, like, your people are there waiting for you. Whether, I mean, when you get there, there's going to be either a co working space or there's going to be, if you're into something like you're a scuba diver, go on a couple trips, you're going to meet other people who are already there who can help you with things that have already done everything you're looking at doing. Um, I wrote down some examples. So there's hostels are a good one.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
you tend to meet people that are traveling, but that's a good thing in itself. You might not meet a lot of locals at a hostel, except for the people running it, which can be very good too. But then there are co-working spaces where you're going to probably meet a mix of locals and travelers. Then there's always, like, almost every community has Facebook groups. Like in Chiang Mai, there's a million of them. There's like the Chiang Mai board game group and the Chiang Mai, people SEO or whatever. So you can just land in Chiang Mai, join a bunch of Facebook groups, and like the next night
Hmm.
you're at a board game meeting with a bunch of like 20 people that live in Chiang Mai playing, whatever game they're playing. I was in a
Or
Scrabble
sand
club.
volleyball.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we would play at the Chiang Mai University, and you meet locals, and that was mostly locals, which was cool. There's meetup.com, which is kind of like, it's not extinct, it's not as active as it was, but there are still active meetup groups there. Yeah, I wrote down volleyball. And then volunteering is another way you can meet locals. You go to like the local dog shelter, walk some dogs, go to the local, like there was an orphanage in Chiang Mai where we would do maybe monthly. A lady organized a thing where we would go and hang out and cook dinner and play with the kids. And, I went on that a couple times and met some nice people. So all I'm saying is if you're worried about losing all your little social circle and your friends, um, A, you can always go back.
Yeah.
B, there's a bunch of people waiting for you there. And then also, if you're lucky, some of your best friends will come visit you because they're like, wow, you're in this interesting place. I want to go check it out.
Help make your friends' lives more interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a great point. That's not something that I've really thought about because I've always had my sister or my partner with me or a family member. So glad you brought that up. And I totally agree. Even as having a partner or my sister, um, you meet people, or I met people, so quickly. So definitely
Yeah.
won't be alone. And there's definitely a lot of great relationships to be
Yeah.
had.
And it doesn't have to be the hard way. You don't have to like go out to a bar and just strike up a conversation with strangers. You can, like, if you're a little more low key than that, like in Chiang Mai, the example that sticks in my mind was the Scrabble club. you know
Hmm.
there'd be like anywhere from 4 to 8 people that show up, and we'd just have probably 2 games going. If it was a slow day, we'd have 1 game going, and we're just at like a quiet coffee shop playing Scrabble.
Hmm.
I mean, it's like super easy way to meet people. So
That seems super low key. That's so
it was
cute.
actually, it was fun. Scrabble, some people are, I mean, they take Scrabble, they get good. I
Yeah.
wasn't, there were some people that were well above my level, but it was fun. It was challenging.
What else? What other gems do you have for us, Dan?
One thing, a big benefit. So we've gone through a lot of the like roadblocks, like the mental hurdles,
Yeah.
but a benefit that I don't think I really thought about it until I was in Thailand. I didn't. Okay, and there's Skyscanner or like what were the other sites? Kayak.com. There's all these travel sites,
Yeah.
and I was in Thailand. I think I was going to need to leave the country for a visa run or something. I start looking on Skyscanner at flights, and I couldn't believe all these places. Basically, I was in like a jump off point to go to lots of interesting places that
Yeah.
seemed, when I lived in the US, it was a big deal to go to Vietnam or Indonesia or, anywhere like that. Seemed like a big, long, expensive trip. But once you're in Thailand, I mean, you can fly to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia for like $50, sometimes even less.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's all these direct flights from Bangkok, and Kuala Lumpur is a big hub. So depending, like if you end up in Europe, you're going to be able to fly from, London or Germany or wherever to all these cool places, and it's only like a 2-hour flight and $100. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a real big benefit. I've gone to a bunch of places that were never even on my list before I lived in Thailand, but it's like Sumatra, for example. I've met people here that like to go surf there, and they kind of told me, "Oh, here's a cool place you might think about." And so I wound up just going there with my dad, and we flew down to Penang, which is like an hour flight. Yeah, it's an hour. And we hung out there, and I got turned down for my visa there, and we just ate good food and had a good time. And then we went to Sumatra, which I think was a 2-hour flight from there. And both of these flights are under $100. I don't remember exactly. And anyway, had a great time in Sumatra, which was a place I couldn't have even found that on a map when I lived in the US.
Right. That's so
Yeah.
amazing. I'm glad you brought that up. And the flights that you can take, like using Air Asia, that like I don't know if you used Air Asia, but I felt like they were a lot cheaper using the Asian sites versus using the American sites. Maybe that's just me.
No, I've heard that too. Like, and I don't know, there's like where you're sitting, like they know your IP address of where you're sitting. And I've
Hmm.
heard people say things like they'll use a VPN to act like they're in Thailand when they search it, even if they're in the US. I don't know. I've never really tested that, but
Yeah.
I they do funky pricing things, the airlines. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, I need to put a little asterisk on this whole thing, which is right now, this stuff is not as easy,
Yeah.
but hopefully at some point it'll become a lot like that again.
Yeah, I'm just gaining inspiration, maybe, for the people that are interested in going to that can't yet, maybe just kind of get the ball rolling, get them
Yeah.
thinking while this whole pandemic is happening.
Yeah.
So let me ask you last question. You stayed in Thailand for 6 years now, and it's probably not just the cheap living that's kept you there. So what's kept you there?
Yeah. So I do. I like life here. Sometimes I get a little frustrated, but then I put it in perspective. Like there's a little bit of traffic on the way to the beach or something, and I'm like, oh, I'm being ridiculous. Yeah. Or there's a little bit of like a visa hiccup or something. It's really not that big of a deal. Um, but the big plus points. Well, I lived in Chiang Mai 3.5 years. Now I lived in Phuket for 3 years, and so that in general in Thailand, um, the weather is a lot nicer for a lot of the year than it was where I'm from. So I avoid the winters. The food is really good here. Cost of living is way cheaper than where I'm from. So that doesn't just mean that I live the same lifestyle for less. You can do things that you maybe wouldn't do back home because you can, it's easier to afford things here. You can stay at really nice hotels. I mean, in Southeast Asia in general, if you spend kind of my rule of thumb, if you spend like $50 or $60 a night on a hotel, that's going to be like a 4-star, maybe a 5-star hotel, where
Yeah,
that's how much is a Motel 6 now in Tempe? I don't know. Is it almost that much? Probably.
I'm sure
I
it's
don't even.
that much.
Yeah, in my head, it's still like $40 because that's what I remember seeing the freeway signs but that was when I was a kid, you know? So yeah, you can live. I mean, your lifestyle here can be really nice and it doesn't have to cost a lot. Like I've been looking at villas in Bali. This isn't
Hmm.
Thailand, but I mean, if you want to spend between 1 to 2,000 a month on a rental house in Bali, which you can stay for way less than that. But if you do want to spend somewhere in that range, we're talking 4 or 5 bedroom house with a beautiful garden with palm trees and all these flowers and a big pool and a little what do you call it? The little pool shelter thing, like a gazebo,
Oh yeah.
whatever that thing's called. and like a big yard and within 5 or 10 minutes of a beach, and yeah. So, I mean, my mortgage on my house back in Bellingham, a 3-bedroom kind of basic house, was that much, and some in Bali in particular, a lot of the properties, they'll have like 2 or 3 small houses on the same property with like a big common kitchen, and it's awesome, So yeah, it's a good life here.
Have you gone as far to get like a chef or somebody to clean your house? Because that's like on the top of my list.
Yeah, having somebody, I haven't ever had a chef, but there's restaurants everywhere. So
True.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely could. Some people have live-in maids that do a lot of things, like especially people with a family. They'll have somebody who like will pick their kids up at school if they're working, or they'll also clean the house and cook and all that. Yeah, that's doable for a lot of families. And I do right now, I don't have an official like house cleaner. I have guys that come and take care of the garden. But yeah, it's really easy to find somebody to come in weekly or whatever you want to clean the house. It's not hard at all. So yeah, you can have a very, very easy life here. Like, I'll give you one more example about the cost of living. Yesterday, I was going to go surfing. The waves were looking really good. I was excited. I got in my car, and as I'm driving, the car sounds a little off, like something's not quite right. And I'm like, man, I really just want to keep driving to the beach because the waves are good, but I'll be really pissed at myself if I like blow my car up because I'm too in a hurry to stop at the mechanic, which is right on the way. So I'd stop there, and I was probably there for like 45 minutes, and it was the fuel injectors had a problem. They fixed it. I think they gave me new spark plugs. I was kind of on the phone at the same time, but they gave me some fuel additive to clean the fuel injectors, cleaned up and tested the fuel injectors, and I think replaced my spark plugs, and the whole thing was $27. And I was back on the road within 45 minutes. I didn't have to like come back tomorrow or leave your car here for a night, none of that. And I was like surfing an hour later, It's just easy. Things, yeah, it's an easy life.
Yeah, that's so awesome. It's so quick and so cheap.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
I'm coming.
yeah. And to give perspective too, like some people get mad when people like us talk about, oh, and it was so cheap. A person here, that would be like if you work at 7-Eleven here, that's almost 3 days' wages. So it's not cheap here, but the cost of living, like, yeah. So that guy was happy, like, woo, that's actually for 45 minutes work, that's good money. But if you're earning it, they call it, the fancy name would be geo arbitrage. If you're earning an income in a rich country and you're living in a country with lower cost of living, then you're taking advantage of that difference, which is great. Yeah.
Ooh, geo arbitrage. I hadn't heard of that before.
Yeah. Fancy way to say it, but it's true, and like, if you're an English teacher here, if you have a college degree and maybe some teaching experience and you get an English teaching job here, you'll make a good wage for here, but compared to what you would make back in your home country, it will sound like a low wage, but it's still plenty to live on here. Like, I think it's a lot of teachers make about $1,000 US a month, which here is plenty. But, maybe you're not going to be saving a ton for retirement back in the US, Anyway.
Things to think about for sure. Maybe just become an entrepreneur like Mr. Dan.
Could do.
Could do if you got it in you.
Yeah. It's everybody has their personality type that, well, actually, and I wanted to mention just real quick, teaching English online has become a much bigger thing in the last few years. When I moved to Thailand, nobody really was doing that, but there are a lot of companies like Data, ABC, and VIP Kid, and some others that hire people to talk on Skype like we are right now. And mostly you're teaching Chinese and Korean kids, from what I've heard. But they're paying like $15 or $20 an hour, and that's good money in a lot of places. So, and the cool thing about that is when you want to leave Thailand and go to Japan, you can keep doing it. So.
Yeah, I know when Andrew and I were there in Thailand, we were doing some sort of online teaching English. It was like $11 or $10 or $11 an hour or something like that. And I was like, yeah, this is great. The only issue is that I had people that would come on for like 3 minutes and hang up, and then I'd wait 10 minutes for somebody to come back on that would be
Okay.
there for 7 minutes, then hang up, have to wait another 10 minutes for somebody to do like a half an hour. So it was like, yeah,
All right.
you're gonna make
Right.
like $11 an hour, but like really you're only working for
Right.
40% of it. So I was like, in a whole hour, I made $5.43. Great.
Yeah. There are some other, I think different companies have different structures. Like some, if I remember right, you have a 25-minute class and then you have a 5-minute break. So you can put them back
Yeah.
to back and have long enough to go get a drink of water or whatever.
Yeah.
And yeah, there are people like you build up that what I've heard is at first you're not really that busy or you just have to take whatever you can get. But then you start,
Mm,
if you do a good job, you get the repeat students and then you're
yeah.
like booked. And some people, they work these 4 days a week and their students know to book them then. And anyway, so yeah, but
Oh, I definitely wasn't doing a good job for repeats.
well, and it could have been the company. Maybe the company you're working with kind of didn't have it all figured out yet or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't know how to teach people either. And like you said, people have their own things that they're good at and what they're not good at. And teaching English to children is not one thing that I'm good at for sure.
Yeah. And there's like, so the way I see it, like just to simplify it, there's kind of three categories. So like not everybody wants to start a business, hire employees or make products or whatever, but that's like the business owner method, which is what I'm doing. And then you've got sort of like freelancer specialist. Some people it's SEO, some people it's teaching English. There's a million things it can be, right? I mean, there are people who do consulting for all different kinds of things, like engineers or whatever.
Mm,
And then the third one is a remote employee, which has become more common lately, especially. But some people work for the same company they were working for back home. Like I had a friend who was a graphic designer, moved to Thailand, and kept working for the same company based in Seattle. As long as he got the work done, it was fine. And so really you can be an employee, you can be a self-employed or a freelancer, or you can be a business owner, and you can do that all location independent, you know?
yeah, that's a great point. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dan, well, it's been so great chatting with you. I know we could probably go for another hour,
Yep.
but just just so you can get to surfing and then I can get to bed. We'll stop it here. But I thank you so much for being
Yeah.
on. This was so
I totally
great.
forgot it's late there, so thank you too. And good luck.
No.
Good luck with everything you're working on.
Oh, thank you, Dan. Well, we'll talk again soon.
Okay, thanks. Talk to you later.
Bye.